Hello, everyone. This is Tom Santana, Director of Government Relations for the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society. And I'm very honored today to be in the Capitol office of Senator Mike Folmer. Senator Folmer is the senator from the 48th Senatorial District, which is comprised of Lebanon County and parts of Dauphin and York County. Senator Folmer was first elected in 2006, and most importantly, he is the sponsor of Senate Bill 3, which passed the Senate in May of last year. Senator, thanks for sitting down with me and having me into your office.
Well, thank you for doing this, Tom. It's a real honor, and this is a very, very important subject.
I agree. Just getting right into it, Senator, how did you become interested in the medical cannabis issue?
Well, in the late fall of 2013, I was visited by two moms whose children were suffering from various forms of epilepsy, and they were doing their grassroots advocacy, I should say. And they came into my office, my Lebanon district office, and the office that my only district office I have in Lebanon, PA. And they sat down with me because at that time, before redistricting, I was one of the mother's state senators, and they were told to go see their legislators. They always go in twos, which is very smart. But they came in, and they didn't have too much hope. They saw a conservative, gray-haired, white guy from a conservative district, and they came in and asked me to be a co-sponsor to then Senator Dalen Leach's medical marijuana bill, which I wasn't aware of the bill. They brought me to it and such, but they did leave me a plethora of information, and they also came across and made a lot of sense. And I'm sitting here listening to the two mothers. So they gave me that information, and that was a Wednesday the Wednesday of the week before Thanksgiving. That Friday, I took that information, and I just started getting into it. And I was up all night Friday night, literally up all Friday night. Well, in full disclosure, I was just finished a chemotherapy treatment, and
Sure.
I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was on prednisone, and I was loaded up, and my family stays away from me whenever I was on prednisone because I would just be all over the place. It's easy for me to be anyway, but I was up all night, and the next day I told my wife, I said, Sheila, I said, we've been lied to. We've been lied to for like 70 years. I said, there's legitimate medical reasonings to use cannabis in various forms for patients if they would choose to use it, and I said, this is crazy. So the next day, the rest of Saturday, I kind of did like a little bit of an outline of what I would kind of do. I was going to get a hold of Senator Leach and see if he would want to do a bipartisan new bill. We'll use a lot of his bill as a foundation and just improve on it. And such. The next day at church, I approached my pastor after the service and the two elders, and I said, listen, I need to talk to you seriously. And which they granted me the time, and I let them know what I was going to do, and I wanted to make sure I didn't want my church to think that I was going off the deep end, and I was now Stoner Mike and so forth. And such, and they backed me up, and they thought it made a lot of sense. So Monday I came in, and the following Monday, and that's how I got into it. There it is.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's just really refreshing to hear someone kind of pouring into that issue and coming up with some great conclusions. When you decided to co-sponsor the legislation and it was introduced, have you ever seen a topic that had support like this? It seemed as though once it got passed in May that it had really strong bipartisan support. Is this an issue that's first of its kind like that?
Well, when I first got into it, Tom, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. My chief of staff was less than enthusiastic. Was going into a re-elect year, 2014, going in for my third term, and my district just changed. So about 43 or 44% of my district was new to me. I wasn't sure how it was going to be received. All I knew was that I saw children suffering.
Yeah.
and I saw all the medications that people were allowed to take, like highly addictive medications like OxyContin, Percocet, and Vicodin, and so forth. And I'm thinking, this is totally crazy. And by the way, this message has to get out. And my fear was that because and no disrespect to Senator Leach whatsoever, please, but because he's in the minority party up here, the Republicans have the majority. I don't think he would have seen light of day. So I figured if I would get involved, and that's why I wanted to work with Senator Leach, the message had to get out and start educating on this very important issue. We weren't there at the beginning. I wasn't aware of, though, I tell you that what, though, I was pleasantly surprised early on. We did a poll in the 48th district, and was not scientific. We just put the question out there: would you support medical cannabis for medical reasons only, not recreational? And we've only had of the thousands that responded, and there was literally thousands that responded. We only had 17 no's.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, again, it wasn't scientific
Sure.
and so forth, but it was like, wow, this may have some legs to it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good barometer. Yeah.
Right, and we got into it and we started educating. Now, I only had one, when we came up with Senate Bill 1182, which was the precursor to Senate Bill 3, we only had one Republican co-sponsor besides myself, and that was Senator Don White. I had to win others over, but we have good people over here, and they were very gracious to listen to me and had good open minds.
Oh, well, that's great, and we thank you for taking that up and good work. When you were working on Senate Bill 3, were you happy with the version of Senate Bill 3 that the Senate ultimately sent over to the House?
Well, it was okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, it wasn't what I really wanted. I'll be upfront with you, Tom. Mm-hmm. I want to regulate it. Don't get me wrong, but the regulations that I would, for me, if it was a perfect bill for Mike Folmer, and I'm okay, I would want third-party labs to make sure that as we come up with the various strains and so forth of the cannabis to use for the various diseases and so forth, if it's supposed to be 20 parts CBD, 1 part THC, I want to make sure that that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Also, we want to make sure there's no foreign objects in it. We want to make sure there's no foreign impurities in it, is what I mean. No mold, pesticides, and so forth. Because this is for medicinal purposes. So we want to make sure that it's raised in the most pure form that it can possibly be, in the most organic fashion that it can possibly be raised for high quality standards. But outside of that, I was hoping to just allow the science, the doctors, and the patients to dictate not only the diseases for it to be used for, but also for the various applications of it. Because as I got deeper and deeper into it, I saw that while I do not want to glorify pot, because it can be abused and misused, and just like anything, sure. It can cause harm. But after saying that, when you're speaking to folks who are using cannabis for medicinal purposes, it affects them differently than it does somebody who's just wants to go out and get a buzz, wants to get a high. Because if all your receptors are working the way they're supposed to work, then you're overstimulating those receptors. Point in case, somebody who is going through chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and those their endocannabinoids, their receptors that are through our head and so forth, that one that triggers us to want to eat, could be damaged, and you just don't want to eat. You feel ill, nausea, the whole bit. That person could take a higher THC strain of cannabis and possibly not even get a buzz, and they're not going to get the munchies. It's just going to say where you didn't want to eat. It's going to say you do want to eat. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody who was totally healthy and did it, and their receptors were working the way they're going to get. Wow, I want the Frito-Lays and I want them now. You know what I'm saying? I want the chips and I want them now. And they get what's known as the munchies. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, it's not going to cause any great harm, but I mean, my point is that it affects sick people differently. So, and as going back to the question on circling back to the whole regulation side of it, I met folks personally. Now, you can call it anecdotal all day long. who cannabis, because they're using it for medicinal purposes, because there's something wrong, where they're suffering from various forms of anxiety, and there's all different types of strains. It affects them differently than it doesn't, than somebody who's just trying to get the buzz.
Right.
Because this is not about the buzz. SB3 was never about that. It's been about medicine.
Sure. On the medicine side of it, what's your position on THC cap in any sort of legislation?
There shouldn't be any. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why. First of all, Marinol, which is FDA approved and used right now, highly, highly expensive, but they found out that it's very effective in reducing nausea for patients who are fighting cancer and so forth, to help them with their appetite, is 100% THC.
Right.
So we already know that if the FDA approved that in this synthetic form, why would they not? Why would you want to have a THC cap? Why not allow the research? Why not allow? Because you just don't know. I'm not fearful of the THC. Is my point, because depending on who the individual is and so forth, and it's a plant, you can have various strains. I think it hurts by putting a cap on it. Is just wrong. And like I said, Marinol is already 100% THC, FDA approved. So why would we want to put a cap on this organic plant matter?
Very, very well said. As I said earlier, Senate Bill 3 was voted out of the Senate chamber and over into the House back in May. The Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society understands that the budget's really held up a lot of legislative priorities, including Senate Bill 3. What's your most optimistic vision of what will happen next with Senate Bill 3?
We got to get it done. And I'm going to keep my optimistic side of it. This has to get done. And by not doing it is just wrong. There's too many folks right now who are suffering. And they're suffering needlessly because, or they don't want to feel like a zombie. In other words, I'm hoping to reestablish that now that we're getting back into 2016, we have to get it done this year.
Yeah.
We have to. The waiting is done. We cannot wait any longer. And the polling is still very, very high in favor of it. All the other things that have been going on from the various things that have been happening were nothing more than like delay tactics. But I'm looking at getting a workable, compassionate bill done, and see what happens.
Excellent. Senator, the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society and its members are very concerned at the regulation of the industry. The results from the passage of Senate Bill 3 will create a sustainable industry that creates high-quality medical products for those who need it. You touched on a number of things before. What are your priorities to that end?
Well, see, like I said, I'm right now my hands are tied.
Yeah.
I would have really liked, like I said, I'm just going to say this.
Sure.
And the regulation as far as the plant goes, it should be regulated like lettuce is. I mean, and any of our food products are. They're watched for E. coli, they're watched for bacteria, they're watched for all those type of things because we're eating those things every day. So the regulation as far as cannabis goes should follow the same strict regulations that we have for organic growth of food products. Okay. I don't need to have it hidden, although folks will probably do so, like they do down to the University of Mississippi. I mean, they have that's where the federal program is that they grow for that. I think there's one or two people left in that IND, the Investigative New Drug Program. One of them is Irv Rosenfeld, who was at our second hearing from down in Florida. They grow. If you look down there, man, it's like this field is like surrounded by tall barbed wire fences with razor wire and so forth. I guess they're afraid the marijuana is going to escape or something. they're fearful that it's going to run away. because if they were fearful that people were trying to get in to get some, it's so accessible today. I mean, it's unbelievable. So my goal to it all was to create a accessible, compassionate access for patients to be able to have high quality. We want quality. That's why we have third party lab testing and such. But right now, I have to see what is to try to get over the finish line, and so forth.
If you could say anything to folks looking to get into the cannabis industry in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and to the patients who are looking to find health benefits from the passage of Senate Bill 3, what would it be?
First of all, get involved and help educate, because that's how we got as far as we have, was through education, and making sure that our facts are correct. Excuse me, and help advocate through education.
Great. Senator, are there any last points on this topic that we didn't cover, or anything that you wanted to say to folks out there?
Well, what I want to say is this. Here's a plant that I believe God has given to mankind. My Christian faith is very important to me, Tom.
Yeah.
So I view this as something that God has given us to have stewardship over. Now, just like in anything that we have and we're given to us to be used, you can have good stewardship and you have bad stewardship.
Yeah.
For 70 years, we, for whatever reasons, without going into the whole history of why this has been demonized and why this was pushed underground, and it has to do with the whole hemp family in itself because of special interests and so forth, we pushed this poor plant and we gave this plant a moral attribute. How can you give a plant a moral attribute? It's not the plant. It's not the plant. It's what we do with it. And this plant is so diverse, and because it's a plant, and once we start to get an understanding and getting to understand it even more and more, we will understand that we can have various strains, and we can do so. And I guess my point is that don't blame the plant. The plant has no inherent evil in it. It's what human beings do with it. The good news is, as Dr. Raphael Mechoulam would say, is, Michael, this is not toxic. You're not going to have, there's no pandemic. Look, there's a lot of people that smoke marijuana in this country today, and I am not calling for the recreational use. I am staying totally away from that whole argument. I'm not here to glorify it, but here's my point. Show me the pandemic. Show me those folks who had to be given a Narcan shot to come back to life, like those poor folks who are addicted to heroin through Oxycontin, Percocet, and Vicodin. And here's the other point I want to bring up to associate with this. In every state that has safe, compassionate access to cannabis for pain relief purposes, their prescription drug overdoses are down 25% in the first 5 years. And those are from 3 separate independent university studies: Johns Hopkins, University of Pennsylvania, and Robert Morse. Those are 3 separate studies that were done. 25%. So here is something that will help us deal with this huge heroin epidemic that we have going forward. And by the way, should we be so surprised that we have this huge heroin epidemic? Here's the United States. We make up about 5% of the world's population, but we use over 75% of the opioids.
Wow.
Are we surprised that we have a heroin epidemic? Here's something to help for pain relief. Here's something that could help with chronic pain and long-term chronic pain usage without it becoming physically addictive. Yes, if somebody is a stoner and they're smoking it recreationally over long periods of time, can become very psychologically dependent upon that psychotropic euphoric high, that buzz, whatever you want to call it. But under proper medical supervision, and because I agree with some of the doctors who are about healing rather than just masking pain.
Yes.
I believe that this would help us with that whole prescription drug addiction problem, and also will help us with that prescription drug overdose problem. Because once people are on OxyContin for, like, I was told, like, for, was it 72 tablets or something, your body gets physically attuned to it, that you actually need it. So it's really, those people who have gone to heroin, a lot of those folks have come because of prescription drugs, aka OxyContin, Percocet, and Vicodin. And then finally, to those folks who say, well, we don't call heroin medical heroin, like we're trying to call marijuana medical marijuana, I said, yes, we do call heroin medical heroin. It's called OxyContin, Percocet, and Vicodin. Mm-hmm. I mean, plain and simple. So, I mean, we've been using plants for a long, long time. Back in the 1930s, the United States Medical Society pleaded with the federal government not to take marijuana off of the pharmacopoeia. They pleaded, do not do so. I could show you pictures from Eli Lilly, cannabis oil, used for various ailments and such. So let's come back to our roots, and let's understand that maybe there's some things that we just can't improve upon, and understand that we do need regulation. We do need to watch this, but it doesn't have to be with a THC cap. It doesn't have to be over this fear of this reefer madness fear. Okay,
Right.
That's not the case. I believe that this will help thousands because it already is. Mm-hmm. And then I said this before, but I promise this is my last point. Last year, this is Farm Show Week. Last year, we were given the American Campaign for Compassion, which is a grassroots group of folks who were advocating for SB3 for medical cannabis in Pennsylvania. Were given a stand at the farm show last year, and for a week we were able to help educate folks coming to the farm show. And we had, for the first weekend, we had about a little over 2,000 of these printed up at the farm show. By Sunday of the first weekend, we were out.
Oh, wow.
We were out of these. People came and took it and were interested in it. We handed out close to 5,000 of these that week. We met thousands. I literally met a little over 1,000 people that week, and a lot of them were people that were already self-medicating, not because they were stoners. Mm-hmm. These were everyday folks. These were military folks. These were lawyers. These were retired school teachers. These were folks who just, and here's what's the common denominator to it all. Mike, on the prescribed medications that I was allowed to have, I felt like a zombie. I didn't feel like I wanted to do anything. This brought me back to normality. It made me feel whole again. It made me feel like a human again. And I'll never forget this, and a quick story, true. I had these two old guys come up to the stand at the farm show last year, and the one helper was like, hey, Mike, I'll take this. These guys look angry because they were two old guys, and they were coming up. So I went out and I said, hi, I'm Mike Folmer. I had one of these in my hand.
Yeah.
And they go, well, we know who you are. I said, oh, this is going to be fun. So I said, well, how can I help you? How can I help educate? He says, no, we want to help you. And he came, he was with his buddy. The one buddy, I'm going to keep him nameless, retired school teacher, suffered from extreme arthritis. And he was on like 5-6 different medications, and he just didn't want to get up in the morning. He just didn't want to do anything. And his daughter did some research and found that, hey, if you put this in your, make a tea out of it, and so forth, and that's what he did. And so he does it on a daily basis. And he told me his story. And he felt, now he gets up and goes, has breakfast with his buddies. He's not a stoner. He's a retired school. He's an old conservative, for crying out loud.
Sure.
It's not about being stoned. And at the end, I was just joking with him. I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any samples. And he says, don't worry, I do. And he said that to me. But the thing of it is, he has to be careful.
Sure.
He could be arrested. And my point is, Tom, if these people are not causing any harm to themselves, and they're not causing any harm to anybody else, whose business is this? And finally, with Thomas Jefferson, I'll leave you with the Thomas Jefferson quote. And this is what good old Tom said. He said, "A people that allow their government to dictate what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their souls are in the same sorry state as those souls that live under tyranny. I don't believe that government, especially in the legislature, should stand between a person and their health. That is between themselves and their doctor and their maker.
Senator Mike Folmer, thank you so much for your commitment to compassion and all the hard work that you've done on Senate Bill 3 for all the people who are suffering here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and for making this world a better place.
Well, we're
Thank
trying, and this is a bipartisan issue, so thank you.